He was a cold, pragmatic boss who saw his employees not as people, but as cogs in a machine. He had no time for sentimentality, no patience for what he called distractions. When a quiet, unassuming employee made a small mistake, the boss gave him a cruel, humiliating task: clean the company's filthiest bathrooms. But what the boss didn't know was that the employee wasn't just a cog. He was a hero with a secret, and what he found inside that bathroom would change both of their lives forever. You won't believe the chilling truth he uncovered, and the devastating choice he had to make. In the pristine, high-tech world of Innovatech Solutions, a sprawling, glass-walled office building in the heart of a bustling metropolis, lived a man named Mr. Caldwell. He was the CEO, a corporate titan with a mind like a steel trap and a heart as cold as the server rooms he oversaw. He was a man who believed in one thing and one thing only: ruthless, unyielding efficiency. He saw his employees not as human beings with lives and dreams and families, but as assets, as resources to be optimized and leveraged for maximum profit. He had no time for small talk, no patience for personal problems, and a profound, unyielding belief that sentimentality was a weakness that had no place in the world of business. He was a winner in a world that rewarded winning at all costs, and he wore his reputation for ruthlessness like a bespoke suit, a perfectly tailored facade of power and control. His past was a ghost story he never spoke of, a history of clawing his way up from nothing, of a life of hardship that had hardened his heart and sharpened his mind into a weapon. He had made a promise to himself long ago that he would never be poor, never be weak, never be a victim again. His employees, a mix of ambitious young professionals and weary veterans, lived in a state of perpetual anxiety. They worked long hours, they ate at their desks, they communicated in a staccato language of jargon and acronyms: synergize, leverage, pivot. They lived in fear of Mr. Caldwell's displeasure, a displeasure that was often expressed not in a shout or a fit of rage, but in a cold, quiet tone that was far more chilling. He would fire an employee for being a minute late, not because of the time, but because it showed a lack of commitment, a lack of respect for his time, for the company's time, for the very fabric of his kingdom. He would praise an employee's work while at the same time devaluing them as a person, a subtle act of psychological warfare that kept everyone on edge. He was a king in a kingdom of his own making, a kingdom built on a foundation of cold, unyielding efficiency and a profound sense of isolation. Among his employees was a quiet, unassuming man named Leo. At 45, he was a senior software engineer, a brilliant mind with a quiet, introspective soul. He was a man of routines, of quiet dignity, a man who believed in the power of a simple, honest day's work. He was a widower, his beloved wife, Sarah, having passed away from a long illness 2 years ago. He was a single father to a 10-year-old girl named Lily, who was the light of his life, a small, bright beacon of hope in a world that had become so very gray. He was not a climber, not an ambitious shark in the corporate sea. He was a man who simply wanted to do his job, to provide for his daughter, to live a life of quiet, unadorned peace. He was, in Mr. Caldwell's world, a cog, a replaceable part, a person who existed only to fulfill a function. He was, in Mr. Caldwell's lexicon, a distraction, a man with a life outside of the office, a man who had a family, a man who had a heart. One Friday afternoon, a day that promised the quiet peace of the weekend, Leo made a small, human mistake. He was working on a complex code, a piece of software that was the heart of a major project, a project that was worth millions, when his phone, a cheap, plastic device he had bought for his daughter, rang with a number he didn't recognize. It was the school nurse. Lily had a fever. She needed to be picked up. Leo's heart, a small, fragile thing, began to pound in his chest. He felt a profound sense of worry, a primal fear that was far greater than any fear of his boss. He looked at the unfinished code, at the blinking cursor on his screen, and he made a choice. He left his desk, leaving the code unfinished. He had to go. He had to be a father. He had to put his daughter first. He would finish the code later. He would work all night if he had to. He would work all weekend if he had to. Nothing, not his job, not his boss, not his future, was more important than his daughter. He returned to the office on Monday morning, his mind a blur of code, his heart still a bit heavy with worry. He had worked all weekend, late into the night, but the code was complete. He walked to his cubicle, a small, gray box in a sea of small, gray boxes. Mr. Caldwell was waiting for him. Mr. Caldwell, a man who was never in the cubicle farm, was standing there, his face a mask of cold, unreadable fury. "Mr. Peterson," he said, his voice a low, gravelly monotone, devoid of any warmth. "I see you left a critical project unfinished on Friday. I understand you had a distraction. I'm not a man who believes in excuses. I am, however, a man who believes in consequences." Leo's heart sank. He knew what was coming. He knew that in Mr. Caldwell's world, there was no room for error, no room for humanity. "Sir," Leo said, his voice a small, broken whisper. "My daughter, she had a fever. She's fine now. I'll stay as long as it takes. I'll finish the code tonight. I promise." Mr. Caldwell simply smiled, a cold, humorless expression that never reached his eyes. "No, Mr. Peterson," he said. "Your code can wait. I have a more pressing matter for you. A more fitting task. Our maintenance crew is short-staffed this week. I need you to clean the bathrooms on the 10th floor. The men's bathroom, specifically. It's a bit of a mess. I need it spotless by the end of the day. Consider it a lesson in priorities. A lesson in what happens when you prioritize your distractions over your work. And when you're done, come back to my office. We will discuss your future at this company." Leo's world imploded. He looked at Mr. Caldwell, his face a mask of disbelief. He was a senior software engineer, a man who had brought in millions in revenue, a man who had built the very systems that ran this company. And now, he was being sent to clean the bathrooms. It was a punishment, a humiliation, a final, utterly brutal dismissal. It was a sign that in Mr. Caldwell's world, a man's value was only as good as his ability to not have a life outside of his work. He was a cog in a machine, and he had just been shown that he was a very, very small cog. He walked to the janitorial closet, a small, forgotten space filled with the smell of bleach and cleaning supplies. He grabbed a mop, a bucket, a bottle of air freshener, and a pair of worn-out rubber gloves. He walked to the men's bathroom on the 10th floor, the filthiest bathroom in the company. He walked in, his heart heavy with shame and humiliation. The bathroom was, as Mr. Caldwell had promised, a mess. A profound, unholy mess. A symphony of human neglect, a testament to the fact that even in a world of glass walls and polished floors, there was a profound, unyielding messiness to human existence. He felt a deep, aching despair. He was a professional, a brilliant mind, and he was being humiliated for being a father, for being a human being. He began to clean, his movements slow and deliberate. He scrubbed the floors, he sanitized the sinks, he cleaned the mirrors. He was a man of routines, and he found a small, quiet comfort in the rhythm of his work. He was a man who believed in doing a job well, no matter how menial, no matter how humiliating. He was a man who believed in dignity, even in the most undignified of circumstances. He was a father, and he was doing this for his daughter, a daughter who was sick, a daughter who needed him. He was doing this for her. He was doing this to prove that he was not a victim, not a loser, but a man of quiet, unyielding strength. He cleaned with a fierce, unyielding determination, as if he were scrubbing away not just the filth, but the shame, the humiliation, the pain. He was a quiet, unassuming man, but in that moment, in that filthy bathroom, he was a warrior. He was scrubbing the last stall, the one that was the most filthy, when he noticed something peculiar. The inside of the stall was covered in graffiti, not the usual crude drawings or crude jokes, but a series of cryptic messages, a series of symbols and numbers that were scratched into the metal with a small, sharp object. Leo, a brilliant mind, a man who saw patterns where others saw chaos, felt a prickle of curiosity. He looked at the symbols, his mind working with a quiet, unyielding precision. He recognized them. They were not random scribbles. They were code. A complex, intricate, beautiful piece of code. He felt a profound, aching sense of wonder, a sense of awe that was far greater than his shame. He was a man who had dedicated his life to the science of code, and he knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was something truly special. He took out his phone and took a picture of the code, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that the code was a secret that had been hidden in the company's filthiest bathroom, a secret that was waiting to be found. He finished his work, his mind a blur of numbers and symbols. He walked back to Mr. Caldwell's office, his face a mask of quiet determination. He was no longer a victim. He was a man with a secret, a man with a weapon, a man with a quiet, unyielding power. He walked into Mr. Caldwell's office, and he placed the mop and bucket on the floor. "The bathrooms are spotless, sir," he said, his voice a low, melodic hum. "You can check for yourself." Mr. Caldwell simply smiled, a cold, humorless expression. "I'm sure they are, Mr. Peterson," he said. "Now, about your future at this company. I'm afraid your distraction has proven to me that you are not fully committed. I am a man who needs commitment. I'm afraid this isn't going to work out." Leo simply nodded, a small, sad smile touching his lips. He took out his phone and he placed it on Mr. Caldwell's desk. "Sir," he said, "I believe you'll want to see this. I found it in the bathroom. It's a code. A complex, intricate, beautiful piece of code." Mr. Caldwell's face, once a mask of cold, unreadable fury, was now a portrait of confusion. He looked at the phone, at the picture of the code, and a look of profound, unadulterated shock slowly dawned on his face. He looked at the code, and he knew, with a chilling certainty, that it was not a random scribble. It was a blueprint. A blueprint for a new technology, a technology that would revolutionize the industry, a technology that would make Innovatech Solutions a multi-billion-dollar company. And he knew, with a chilling certainty, that the code had been hidden in the company's filthiest bathroom, a place that no one, not even he, would ever think to look. He looked at the code, and he saw a name that was hidden in a series of symbols and numbers. He saw the name of his chief rival, a man who had just launched a competing company. He saw the name of his chief rival, a man who was about to steal his kingdom, a man who had hidden the blueprint for his new technology in the one place he thought no one would ever find it. Mr. Caldwell's face was a study in pure, unadulterated terror. He looked at the code, at the blueprint for his rival's new technology, and he knew, with a chilling certainty, that he had been outmaneuvered. He had been outsmarted. He had been outplayed. And he had no one to blame but himself. He had sent a man to clean the bathrooms, a man who was a quiet, unassuming genius, a man who saw patterns where others saw chaos. He had sent a man to a place he thought was a place of filth and humiliation, and he had sent him to a place that held the key to his own destruction. He looked at Leo, and he saw not a cog, but a king. He saw not a loser, but a champion. He saw not a man who was a distraction, but a man who was a hero. Leo simply looked at him, his face a mask of quiet determination. "Sir," he said, "I believe this changes things. I believe you'll need my help. I believe you'll need a man who knows how to find things in the most unlikely of places. I believe you'll need a man who knows how to prioritize his distractions. I believe you'll need a man who knows that a family, a daughter, is far more important than any job." Mr. Caldwell, a man who had never begged in his life, simply looked at him, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and awe. He looked at the man he had once humiliated, the man he had once dismissed, and he knew, with a chilling certainty, that he was no longer in control. He was a loser in his own kingdom, and he had no one to blame but himself. He had sent a hero to do a janitor's job, and he had found a champion. Leo simply smiled, a small, sad smile that never reached his eyes. He had found his redemption, not in a new job, not in a promotion, but in the quiet, profound act of cleaning a bathroom. He had learned that true dignity was not in a title, but in a kind heart. He had learned that true wealth was not in money, but in the love you gave, and the lives you touched. He had walked into the bathroom as a loser, and he had walked out as a champion. And in that moment, he knew that he was finally, truly, free. He had found his humanity, not in a prestigious office, but in a dirty bathroom. He had been broken, but he had been remade. He had lost his job, but he had gained something far more valuable, his dignity. This story is a powerful reminder that you never know who you are talking to. It's a reminder that a single act of cruelty can come back to haunt you in the most unexpected ways. It's a reminder that true dignity is not about your title, but about your character. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of resilience. Like and subscribe for more stories that will change your perspective and remind you that sometimes, the most valuable lessons are the ones that are learned in the dirtiest of places.